Hi, so it's Greg again. I wanted to show you another couple of things about the practices I use to build Power Automate flows. So this is the run history of a flow that I created. And what it does is it manages CRUD operations on a list. You pass it information and it will go to that list and it will get an item, it will delete an item, it will run a query and return multiple items. You can update an item. And what that does is put all the SharePoint CRUD actions, kind of connectors in this one place. And then other places can use them. And they don't have to write error logic. They don't have to do a lot of stuff. They can just use this flow. And in that sense, it almost becomes like an object that you can use. What I wanted to show you was another practice that I use, which is to really minimize the signature, the number of parameters that I take into a flow. So there's the trigger. I'm going to show you the inputs. This is all header information. But almost all my flows now take two parameters or two inputs. One is a JSON object, and that object has properties with all the information that flow needs. Another one is called a flow context. I'll do another video on that, but I pass this object from, parent to child to child to child so that all flows can share information, can write error information to a single place. And then I write that to a document, something called a run log. I'll also show run logs. But this is a little easier to see if we go down. Let's look at where I assign the input, which has to be a string, to an object. So if I look at this, you can see this is the object. You have to pass it the site address. You have to pass it a list name. And in this case, I'm passing an ID. You can also pass a query. There are various options. But this is kind of like the minimal set of data you need to go and get list item. Interesting side effect is you can wrap this flow and pass default values for a certain site address for a certain list. And then you have a very easy way to access a certain list. The developer who uses your flow doesn't have to know anything about the list or anything else. They can just pass a key or pass an ID and it will retrieve it. So this really has some benefits, which is if you change the number of inputs for your flow, I haven't done it, but I'm pretty sure it breaks it everywhere. Any place that calls it, you will have to go into that flow and change it because now there's a mismatch. When you used it the first time, it had 3 inputs, now it has 4. With this approach, if I need to really add inputs, they just become properties in that object. So as I said, I would say 90% or more of my flows now just have 2 parameters, which is that object. And what you can see, by the way, if we go down here to my finally block and we look at where I respond, we can look at what it responds in. Here, out payload is actually an array of items expressed as JSON. There are no messages. It tells me success is true. And there's also this out info parameter. It has to do with some stuff that I was doing that's really not there anymore. I was passing back a bunch of information about what happened. But anyway, the upshot is that in flows, you should consider minimizing the impact of changing the number of parameters. And one way to do that is to pass a JSON object. And then if you add something, it doesn't change the flow signature and doesn't break.